Hello everyone, and welcome to this shortened Hatha yoga practice with myself here, Anthony. And we have Izzy modeling for us. I'll try and do some of the stuff as well, demonstrating, but then it gives me the chance to come over and have a little look at what's going on over here. Gives you another reference point as well. Okay, so for today's session, what we're thinking about is I'm thinking about the idea of drainage and of moving the blood and the various fluids of the body, tipping it from one side to the other. So the idea of tipping or drainage, the idea came to me from thinking about one of these rain sticks. So you know these rain sticks that we have for making sound, the sound of rain, or you tip it up and you feel the grains. I think it's rice inside them that tips, and you get a feeling as you tip it from one side to the other. Let's think about the body in that same way. But when we tip in the body, we have to think that those fluids have a certain texture. And so we tip and we drain, and we're just going to wait for that feeling of the blood and of various tissues and various fluids in the body to find their way down to those distant ends of the body. Okay? So we're going to start by coming to downward facing dog. So bring the hands down to the floor and send your pelvis into the sky. And this may be your first part of your practice for today, so feel free to give yourself a little walk through your ankles, perhaps a gentle press from one hand to the other hand. And here we're getting that drainage feeling from the lower parts of the spine, just draining through towards the hands, draining down the back of the legs, and just tune into that feeling of gravity falling down through your structure and just easing you, connecting you down into the ground. And as we're in this position, we start to tune into that feeling of our breathing. A nice, steady, easy, natural pranayama running through the center of our practice. If you're working with Ujjayi, if you know Ujjayi pranayama, then feel free to bring that into your practice, but keep it as a breathing very much for yourself at the back of the throat, and a very soft and subtle breath. So that we're not over-elevating our energy within our practice. We're keeping it nice and stable. So feeling that steady drainage back towards the wrists and towards the ankles, perhaps spreading out the bones of the feet, the bones of the hands, and feeling how the warmth from those various fluids as they enter into those two distant parts of the body just start to create that feeling of melting, softening, connecting to the floor. Now with our next steady breath in, what we're going to do is lift up those heels, start to curve the spine and come forwards. Let's lower the knees down into the floor. And we're just going to move the heels back, keeping the toes tucked underneath. Walk the hands closer, coming up towards a camel position. Now if camel isn't comfortable, just stay here with the toes tucked underneath and open up the chest here. But you may find that you can come up onto your shins. Now feel that you're pushed down into the shins and push the shins backwards, or those knees backwards. And we start to lift up the chest towards the sky. Just let those hands sink into the tissue and let them slide down. Now maybe you want to open up the front surface of the throat, so we can allow the nose to lift up a little higher, and we feel here very much an opportunity to imagine a cascading waterfall of something very lovely and warm. So not maybe a cold waterfall, a nice warm steady tropical one that's coming down and is tipping down the body, and we feel that softness. Perhaps thinking about honey falling its way down. I know that some teachers reference lava lamps in their practice. Perhaps this is a nice one for you here. So you feel that lava lamp, that gooey stuff falling down through the body, draining and connecting you down towards the ground. Now with your next steady breath in, let's just lift yourself up out of any spinal arching there. If you're lifting up onto the shins, let's bring the bottom back down towards the heels, maybe untucking the toes here for that one. Bring the hands forward, and we'll come back to down dog, and just draining back down towards the hands of the distant parts of the body. And just feel that slow, easy melting connection towards the floor. We're going to start lifting the heels and gradually walking the feet towards the hands. As they come forward, keep this softness running down the back surface of your spine. Imagine again that soft, thick, warm liquid tipping onto the lower part of your spine around the sacrum, and it just diffuses its way down beneath the surface of your skin through those lovely soft connective tissues, muscles, running down the backs of the legs, and we feel that change, that gravity falling through the structure. Now from here, what we're going to do is start to bend the knees deeply. We're coming into a deep squat. So maybe you want to externally rotate a little into the feet, and we find our way down. This is maybe where your brick maybe comes in handy, and you can just perhaps even perch onto your brick here and just lift your chest up a little bit. Now let's bring the the fingertips down onto the floor here. So even if you're feeling comfortable with hands up, just bring them down to the floor and connect those fingers into the ground. And here we're draining into the bowl of your pelvis. Feeling the blood just falling down, anchoring you, deepening the folds of the knees, of the hips. And let's start by moving the weight across towards the right side a little there and falling, draining into the right ankle, pressing down into that right wrist. Now maybe you want to circle the left arm around the back here, just rest the back of the hand onto the sacrum or lower spine, and we let the head and chest open up, perhaps allow the head to fall towards the right shoulder. And we have that lovely melting, softening neck. Perhaps we'd like to lift the arm all the way up to the sky and extend it. And here we have that rain stick, those grains of rice falling down through a thickened liquid, coming down through the arms, just tipping you, softening into that slight sideways bending of your spine with a rotation. Lovely. Perhaps with your next exhale, if your arm is elevated up to the sky, you might slowly float it down. Let the body soften here and take a momentary forward curve. Maybe head relaxes down to the floor. Still sitting onto your brick here if you're using that. Then let's transition across to the left side. So move those left fingers perhaps a little bit out. Maybe the shoulders dropping down onto the inside line of the leg. And I'm rolling the right side of the chest up. Perhaps that right arm coming behind the back. Just resting it down onto the sacrum, the lower parts of the back, rolling the right collarbone to the sky, easing that right side of the neck and feeling inside your skull perhaps the various fluids that support and float your brain. How can those soften and just drain a little bit so we feel the weight of the brain even inside the skull, the weight of the eyes inside the skull. Perhaps that right arm extends to the sky and we feel that gradual falling of a thickened fluid below the surface of your skin. How does it find its way all the way into your left elbow and left forearm? Perhaps left wrist. And with your next easy exhalation, just allowing that right arm to soften, chest softens, again, just let the head fall and relax. Now let's bring the weight a little forward. So for those of us on the brick, you may need a little momentary bit of swinging momentum action to come forward. And just lift your bum up towards the sky, dangling position again. Maybe turning the feet back in a little bit here if they were turned out. And use this as an opportunity perhaps to move your brick aside. Just draining down, perhaps holding on to opposite elbows and feeling that subtle release for the backs of the legs and spinal muscle. I've got my head a little lifted here, so if you're referencing the camera, maybe look towards Isabel here, and you can see that lovely released neck, and the brain just hanging down inside her skull, and the soft, warm, thick liquid beneath the surface of the skin here, just sliding everything down. Shoulder blades don't need to be pinned at this point. You can let them slide down, free up some of those tissues beneath your scapula. And then from here, let's bend those knees a little further. Feel the slowly sliding structures of the back legs. Anchor through the feet, firm into the abdomen a little. Now let's start drawing the shoulder blades up the spine. So we're feeling the spinal muscles engage and start rolling up. Coming all the way up to standing. As you approach vertical, roll the shoulders back, let your eyelids be heavy and close those eyes. Just standing up nice and tall. Feel the feet melting into the floor, and just give them a slight feeling of pushing backwards in space. Then that perhaps brings your pelvis forward for those of us that do chronically hold a little bit of tightness in the hips. Let's allow the eyes to open. Gradually let the arms float up. Rain stick arms. And just reach the arms up overhead. Feel that drainage of them falling down the back, those shoulder blades melting and falling down the back surface. Let's soften the knees. Perhaps with our next exhalation, firm into the abdomen and take a hinge forward. Now stop halfway into that hinging. Bring the hands down onto the thighs. A gentle push into the thighs perhaps, just to help give you some firmness here in an Utkatasana position. With offloading some of the spine here. I'm letting those sitting bones move back. I'm pushing the feet backwards in space, just draining into the feet, draining into the bowl of pelvis, and lightening in the chest, the heart, and in the mind. So I'm keeping it nice and free and easy. And from this position, I'm slowly going to take a forward bend. Bring the hands down towards the floor. Step back with your right foot into a lunging position. Lower the back knee down. So moving in a way through Surya Namaskar, but very steadily. I'm untucking the back toe. I'm going to push through that front foot, and I'm going to lift my chest up. Rain stick chest. Now you've got that lovely drainage from the heart, from the brain, all of this sinking down into the floor, anchoring your awareness and consciousness in connection to the floor. How can we still feel that firmness into the center? Perhaps we'd like to add on rain stick arms and reach those arms up into the sky, feel them melting, sliding down the back. Perhaps there is a bending of the elbows for a brain cradle if you'd like as well. That's another option, to just drain out the elbows and soften into those tissues. The head can then really relax and let go of that myriad of thoughts running through your mind. Just tune into feeling that slow easing and melting of tissues in the body falling into the floor, creating a puddle beneath you. And with your next steady breath in, as we energize a little bit here, lift out from any spinal arching, bring the hands down into the floor. And we're going to step our way back just into a all fours position, and let's melt the chest down towards the floor. Hands come a bit further forward, perhaps keeping the chest away from the ground a bit at first. So I'm working strong into the shoulders. Maybe if there is the capacity, I can come down onto the chest, maybe the chin rests down for a melting heart position. So this is a variant here in a way of a downward facing dog position. But I've got a little bit of energy here, still pressing down through those arms into the floor, and I'm feeling the drainage again, giving a release and decompression for the lowest parts of the spine. And this can be a fantastic posture for really giving us that release into the hip folds, a deep fold there, and a gentle stress through the hamstrings. So we're taking away the stretch into the calf muscles, and we're just easing into the connection here over the back surface of that pelvis. And from here, what we're going to do is come forwards towards an upward-facing dog position. So I'm going to come forward, press into those hands, come forward, like we would take a chaturanga, but instead of taking chaturanga, we're just going to let the pelvis gradually fall. But I'm firming into the abdomen and opening the chest. So I'm hovering a little away from the floor. Rather than letting the pelvis completely sink, I've got firmness into the abdomen. If you need to, you can always stay more into a planking position. But finding that stability into the center as you let the spine soften, perhaps lift the tip of the nose a little bit further so you feel that slow drainage down the back line. Imagine where water would fall, or perhaps honey would fall if it landed on your head right now. If you've ever been for an Ayurvedic massage, that lovely thick oil that they tip on you. And you can feel it sliding down that ravine of your spine, those valleys that run on either side of the vertebra. Now from here, firming into the center of the body again, slowly press into those hands, come back through an all fours position, tucking toes, and drift back into downward facing dog. Pressing out through those hands, relax the ankles, and drainage again. Just feeling that steady, steady drainage of sinking back into those wrists. Feel the weightedness of your body. It's a real grounding part of practice here, this idea of draining, that feeling of gravity. The spiral line coming down the legs from the outside edge of the legs, coming around, wrapping around the front of the knee and into the inner ankle. Just feeling that steady spiral like a slide, one of those water flumes that we'd maybe find that would go down in a rubber ring. And you're just feeling that gentle fall. And then from here, slowly walk your feet forwards again. Come back towards that dangling position. We're going to open up the feet and come back down to that squatted position. So I'm turning the toes out. I'm going to soften through the knees and really deeply squat down. We won't be here for too long, so maybe not bringing back the brick at this point. Just feeling that sinking down feeling. Feeling that lightness in the head as the blood drains away from the skull. Bring the weight a bit forwards again. Send the bottom into the sky. Bring the feet more into a parallel. Soften the knees, firm into the abdomen, come back up with a mild hinging this time, back to that Utkatasana. So a chairing position, perhaps even resting hands onto thighs. If you feel that your spine can take that load, then bring the arms a little further out into space, rain stick arms, and just feel the gravity and those grains of sand or whatever it is inside that rain stick falling down through those arms into that momentary space around your shoulders. The shoulder blades then slide down the back. We feel all that cascading down through the body. Now let's take a softened forward bend again, hinging at the waist so we don't overwork the spinal muscles, and relax down. Let's step the left foot back here into a lunging position. Lower down the back knee and untuck the toes. Firm into the abdomen, press into the right foot and come on up, rain stick chest and rib cage. Imagine like a hollowed out rib cage. And then we've got sand like an hourglass in there, and it's falling through into the pelvis, weighting the pelvis down so I can sink a bit further, deeply grounding us in our connection to the floor. Perhaps if you'd like, rain stick arms. They can climb up, finding that there is that perhaps opposition reach up with the fingernails towards the sky, perhaps moving the shoulder blades up a little bit and away from the back. So you do get that wrappage here, but we're letting all of that fluid drain down through the arms into the well of the heart, into the rib cage, and down into the bowl-like structure of the pelvis. With your next inhalation, create some space into your body. Then slowly bring those hands down into the floor. Step again back into an all-fours position. That melting heart position again. Let's just pass through that space. So bend into the elbows. Let the spine just drape down again, easing into the structures on the front surface of the body. A nice opening stretch for the chest area. And perhaps feeling that mild compression to the neck. If that doesn't feel comfortable, you can always turn your head to the side. If you did that previously on the previous side, remember which side you went to, maybe go on the opposite side now. But here in this position, feeling that there is a sense of drag. So the fascial tissue, that connective tissue, is dragging the tissues from the pelvis up and over down the back. And we feel that giving release here. Likewise, we feel it coming over the back of the pelvis, giving a release into the hamstring area. So there's slow changes into the body in this position. And now slowly pressing into those knees and shins, toes pushing down, come forwards towards that upward facing dog position again. So I'm passing through a plank. Feel free to remain in plank if that's enough of a stress. But if you find that you can arch the spine a little and open the chest, and you're draining the weight down into your hands, pressing the fluid that gathers underneath the palms of your hands into the floor, like you're trying to create your stamp onto the floor beneath you. Same with your knees here. You're stamping down into the floor and sending that stamp backwards. Firm into the abdomen. Press yourself out from this position. Come back to a downward facing dog. Finding that spaciousness into the spine, softness perhaps in your knees, but feel the draining. Walk your feet gradually towards your hands, bringing them about hip width apart this time. Soften your knees, and we're going to gradually roll up. Come all the way up to standing. Lean into your right foot and step your left foot back. Let's turn the right toes in. So we're now in a more parallel position, perhaps the toes a bit closer. Prasarita. I'm going to push the feet down, push the feet backwards in space. Hands onto hips. Push the skin down, but lift up through the center. And now here we're going to check, so we've got our drainage here coming down through the body, how we might normally feel the body in a vertical, and we're going to invert it. So widen the back surface of the pelvis, push the feet backwards, and hinge forward. Prasarita Padottanasana. If you'd like to add rain stick arms, you can interlace the fingers behind your back, and then let those arms go over your head. And just feel here the drainage from the bowl of pelvis back towards the head. A sense perhaps of gathering fluid or energy up through your feet. So you've got an energetic pull up through your legs, but we have this lovely softening here into the pelvis, down the back surface of the neck and over the head, and we draw it up and into the heart on the front surface. So there's a sense of gathering inward on the front right now in this prasarita, but there is a melting and an opening into the back surface on the back there. Now, if you have the interlace of the fingers, you might now at this point prefer to release the bind of your fingers. Just bring them down onto the floor. Perhaps shorten the distance between your 2 feet. And we're going to let the toes turn out a little bit. Now, instead of sinking down into a deep squat, we're going to bend a little into the knees, push into the feet, and we're coming up to a deep squatted position, but not all the way down. The arms are reaching out into space. So now we have rain stick arms, rain stick skull, draining down through the spine, gathering energy into the bowl of the pelvis. In terms of the legs, we are drawing energy and stability up from the floor. We're finding that support from the ground beneath us, gathering that into the pelvis as we soften down into it, like we're slowly sinking into quicksand in the thighs. Perhaps allow the shuddering in your thighs at this point to become distant and instead enjoy that welling into your pelvis on the front surface. Now, slowly from your well-like position here, we're going to press our way up into 2 lengthened legs. And let's drop the right hip down towards the floor. We're going to turn the right toes towards the back of or the front of your mat. Bring the left toes in a little bit. Melting into Trikonasana. I'm dropping into the hip, but move the ribs across already. So we get away from this sideways bend in the ribs. And we've got a melt here. So we're tipping our rain stick. Bring the right arm down onto the leg perhaps for some structural support and just melt down here. Left hand onto the outside edge of the hip and roll your chest open to the sky. Now we've got many rain sticks here. We've got drainage down through the legs. We've got a drainage down through this right arm. We've got a drainage from the shoulder through the neck and into the skull. We've got a drainage of the eyes into the mind. That focus going inward rather than outward. We've got a drainage from the left ear, my voice, going through into the head and out through the right ear, because no one wants to hold that inside the head for very long. Now we're going to slowly soften into that right knee a little bit. Press into that right knee and slowly bring yourself back up out from that position. Simply transitioning this over to the other side. So we're going to turn the right toes in, the left toes towards the back end of the mat. Let your arms come up. Find a sense of reach up and out first. Gathering our energy. Gathering those grains of rice or sand inside the rain stick. Drop into your left hip. Careful here to not stick it backwards here. So if your bum drifts backwards too much, be very careful of that. Widen the pelvis for sure, but be careful of sending it too far backwards and loading the spine. And then start to move out into space and get that rain stick effect, falling out into space. Perhaps the left hand comes down to offload the spine a little sooner, and then I can melt through the side body. Keeping both sides quite long here, so not worrying too much about getting the head down and then arcing the spine, keeping it nice and long. So the spine itself is like a long rain stick, but the grains of rice are coming out through that left ear towards the floor. How does the jaw perhaps turn into a rain stick? If Izzy's to really relax her jaw, she's going to thank me for this. And you can see her jaw falls away towards that left-hand side. So we relax those TMJ joints around the jaw here, and we let the jaw fall away. And she gets that lovely crooked face, which everyone loves. Izzy's crooked face. Good. Now let's soften into that left knee and feel the pooling of the softness, though, fluids into that left ankle. Press into it and gather yourself back up to stand up nice and tall. Come towards the front end of your mat. So turn your right toes back towards the front and step forward. Take the arms up to the sky. Open up your chest. Perhaps push the feet down slightly backwards. Your exhale bends the knees, hinge forward from the waist, a draining forward bend. Soften your knees and step back into a plank. Lower the knees down. Bring the forearms into the floor. And you'll thank me for this one. Your planking position. So I'm going to press the forearms down, protracting those shoulders. I'm going to lift the knees. And here we're long in the spine. And here we're draining in a slightly different way. Draining from the heart space through those elbows into the floor, draining from the pelvis down through the legs and letting the ankles relax somewhat in this position. So it's a different kind of drainage, but if we focus in on the drainage, perhaps that helps us move away from overstraining in the core stabilization. Perhaps it helps us get over that overwhelming nature that can come from planking positions. Taking a few more steady breaths here. Be bold, be brave, stay strong in your rain stick, in your planking position. Now, perhaps with your next steady breath in, create some space. Can we push the elbows further down and hug the ribs in a little more? Let's lower the knees, if they're not already down, if we've modified that posture, and come down onto the front surface. Bring the arms out in front of you. Now start to engage the buttocks here. Think of pushing the pelvis down into the floor. Flex the feet. Now push the toes down to lift the thighs and the knees here, but then start to lift the heels up towards the sky and take the toes away from the floor. So you start to switch on the chain in the back legs. Arms come further out in space and forwards, and we're lifting up those 2 or 4 distant ends of the body, the feet and the wrists here, or the hands and the feet, and we're draining everything back. So this is a lovely bowl here, and all of that's coming towards this central part of the body, gathering strength here into the lower parts of the spine. Good. Perhaps take one more steady breath in. How can we create space into this lovely deep bowl? And with your exhale, lower and ease yourself down into the floor. Take a relax, untuck your toes, and breathe deeply into your belly. Feel that connection into the floor. Let's bring the hands by the shoulders, by the sides of the ribs there, firm into the abdomen, and let's press away from the floor. Now, folding back, we're going to come into a headstand practice. Now, for this, I think, Izzy, you're going to maybe demonstrate the first variant, which is to keep ourselves in a slightly lower variant, not coming all the way into full headstand. And I'll maybe go for the full posture. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to tuck myself in a little bit so I don't end up naked on the screen. And we're going to come forward. Let's go for this classic variant of the hands interlaced, rather than the hands on the floor for tripod. Okay, so I'm going to interlace the fingers, release the thumb, bring the head down, and then drain the weight into the crown of your head and use the hands here as a stopper. So it stops your head from tumbling over the top there. Then think of gathering the elbows towards each other. Don't worry about a measurement here coming from the arms. Just bring the hands in so you feel really stable in this position. The wider the arms, the more unstable the position. So gather it in towards the center. Now start to hug in the ribs towards the spine. Start to firm into the abdominals a little bit. Let's bring the knees out of the floor and bring the pelvis into the sky. So this may be where some of us maybe want to take rest and we just remain here, feeling the wonderful drainage here that comes from draining the blood back towards the head. Perhaps you want to step a bit closer. Perhaps you maybe want to investigate bringing knees to chest. And again here, I'm lifting the tailbone and I'm draining that rain stick of my spine. Now you may prefer, this is a perfectly good position for today. We don't even need to take the full headstand practice. Even this is just enough to feel that sense of drainage. But if you'd like, you can bring the legs up to the sky and really feel that decluttering of your ankles and legs as everything falls back into earth, back through the head, connecting you into the floor. Check that the breathing is still nice and easy here, that we're not straining the breath. And let's soften at the knees if the legs are up to the sky. Soften at the waist if the legs are extended. Let the feet find the floor, and let's ease down. Bring the hands into the floor, press your way back and come up to sit up on your shins. Bring the hands onto your thigh and just sitting here in that Virasana position. Now for those of us who find Virasana uncomfortable, you can use your brick here, you can put that underneath your pelvis. Perhaps even changing the position and sitting cross-legged if you prefer. But just come to a position where you feel comfortable, just check in here, and you're draining again, returning the blood back to the heart, returning that sense of groundedness through your sit bones, through your shins, through the limbs that we predominantly spend most of our time connecting to the ground, through our legs and through our sitting bones. And feel perhaps for what the benefit comes from being in those inverted positions, a lightening in the head. As you get that flooded feeling in your inversion, as we come out from the inversion, it's a wonderful sensation as everything lightens around the upper body. Let's allow the eyes to open. Tip off to one side here, remove any bricks from underneath bottoms, and let's send the legs out in front of us. Reach the arms forward in space. Now lift up out of your pelvis, firm into the abdomen, hinge back first. Start to feel the abdominals contracting. Then start to feel that you can slide the sacrum underneath and just ease your way onto your back. Bend your knees, bring the heels much closer towards the sit bones. Arms down by the side body and chest is open to the sky, collarbones widening. Bridge position. So now from here, we're just going to push those feet down into the floor and lift the pelvis, firming into the abdomen to protect the spine. And we have another drainage here. Drainage from the knees coming down into the feet, and you feel that spreading, that connecting into the floor. Drainage from the pelvis coming back through the heart, perhaps through the shoulders here. So this is preparation for coming into a shoulder stand position. We won't go into shoulder stand today, but it's a wonderful way of just bringing that sense of awareness and connection through the shoulder girdle into the floor. It's not an area of the body that we often connect into the ground, but it's a great way of feeling that spaciousness and feeling the strength that we have in the shoulder girdle. So keeping that firmness to the center, perhaps giving an extra little bit of push down through the feet and decompress all of the joints, open up the body, and then slowly ease your way down. Roll out from that position. Lovely. And let your legs extend out into space. Now in this position here, just let your arms come down by the side body, with the palms faced up towards the sky, legs nice and long. If that's uncomfortable for lower spines, if it does trigger any cramping into the lower back, then feel free to bend the knees a little bit, or even place bricks beneath your knees to give them a little bit of softening, and it lessens the strain onto the psoas. How are we feeling there in the lower back? Is you feeling okay? So just let your arms and bring your arms down a little lower by the side body for me. So we're going to take another little movement here for fascia, or a movement through the fascia and tension through the shoulder girdle. So we're going to bring those arms a bit even closer, Izzy, for me, if you can come really close to the body. And then just lift the hands, the back of the hands, the back of the elbows, and the back of the upper arms, those triceps, away from the floor by about 0.5 centimeter. So you're just triggering that little bit of engagement here into the front body. Those chest muscles get involved here, a little bit the deltoids, as we just lift the hands a bit away from the floor. Now very slowly, you're going to rotate the palms to face the floor. So take it easy there as you take an internal rotation. Feel the changes in tension in the shoulder girdle. Now slowly, with the back of the hands, you're going to slowly lift those arms up to the sky. Be very slow, very steady. As they approach vertical, we're feeling that drainage of the arms back towards the shoulders. Feel the shoulders now melt and connect into the floor. Perhaps the back of the heart gets the greater sense of connection to the floor here. Arms slowly come overhead. And as they approach that vertical, you may feel a little unstable in the shoulders. I know that Izzy's quite loose in her shoulders and she has hypermobility. So for her, she maybe goes wider with the arms, or if it feels really uncomfortable, just bring them right out to the sides. But if you feel quite comfortable, let the arms slide right up overhead and make the contact with the floor. Just let them sink into the ground and then release. And feel that subtle change from being engaged around the shoulder to being completely released. Close your eyes, sink into your body, and this is our Shavasana. Just letting the soft tissues of the body now melt away from the bones. Those bones in a way like that supportive structure of our frame, of our form, but those soft tissues help us to maintain, to move, to make those actions that we perform every day. So they bear a lot of brunt from our daily activity, or even in our daily inactivity. So how can we just feel that drainage now as we fall into the ground? So feel free here now, guys, to remain in this position. You can stay here for as long a period as you like. And I'm now gradually just going to bring this practice to a close. So thank you all very much for joining me for this short Hatha session. And have a lovely day ahead of you, or evening ahead of you. Namaste. Thank you all very much.